All right, so we are on the second day of talking about trafficking prevention. So we picked up the books. And so now so if I do just a travel study right, then all right, so let's start with this one. This one is the anthology one, right? Yeah. And there was one in particular that I wanted to look at. Which one is the one that was? Woman traffickers victimize other women. That was the one that I thought really caught my attention. Or that I was talking about yesterday, at least. I'm sure it was another one, though. But they're not really... I've never really felt that trafficking was gender specific. Like, I don't know if this is really a worthwhile angle to focus on, because trafficking involves so many different situations. But I'm going to take a look at that. Is today Wednesday? Oh yeah, it is Wednesday. Crap. Yeah. All right, so we're here on another Wednesday. I started the live a little late on Instagram, but that's okay. We are focusing on trafficking, awareness, trafficking, prevention. And yesterday we watched a video that gave a little bit more detail about what trafficking really is, and what it includes. So trafficking is really any avenue towards exploiting someone. It could be exploiting someone, the paths that someone will take to get to the exploitation, whether it be sexually, financially, or through labor, however it might be. Or at least that's how I remember it, my understanding of it. And the particular video that we watched was a little old, and one of the women in the video said that it was odd that the definition didn't include the actual exploitation. So maybe it does include exploitation now. I guess I should look for it, like an actual 2025 definition, like what it is today. But I have all the books, and right now I'm looking at one book that's more of an anthology. It calls itself an anthology. I mean, there's another book that has a bunch of different chapters on different topics, loosely related, written by different people. But there was one chapter that I wanted to look at here. I don't think I'll focus on entire books. I mean, I guess I could, but I think I'll probably focus in on chapters more so for these itineraries. All right, page 174. The title of the chapter is Women Traffickers Victimize Other Women. And that's on page 174. One 74. All right, it's loading. So I thought about a different way to set up the itineraries for this week, like whether there should be a different way of doing that. We could do we could double up on the travel, but I don't think that's really appropriate. So I'm just going to do a regular travel study right setup. And see where that takes us. All right, so it says Claudia Nunez. Claudia Nunez is a reporter for the Spanish language newspaper La Opinión. So here we have Gaviota, not her real name, has 6 phones that don't stop ringing. Her booming business produces net profits of more than $50,000 a month. She has dozens of customers lining up for her and a date book stretching 3 months ahead. Gaviota is not exactly a college-educated professional, much less a businesswoman in a legal enterprise. But she has found Coyotaje, is that how you say it? Illegal human trafficking to be her best option of keeping the promise she tearfully made to her 2 children. As long as they don't kill me, you won't live in poverty. Women are the new coyotes. Gaviota is one of dozens of women along the southern border of the United States who are active participants and often the masterminds behind the world's third most lucrative illegal industry after drugs and weapons, human trafficking. Experts, authorities, and the smugglers themselves agree that human trafficking networks are entering a new era in which women have ceased to be the victims, smuggled across the border and often raped along the journey, and have become the ones that pull the strings in smuggling people, goats, chickens, or furniture, as they call the undocumented. The old story of the man who runs the Koyatahe business is now just a myth. It's finally coming out that the big business of human trafficking is in female hands. As long as they make it known that they are women, they have lots of business all along the border, explains Marissa Ugarte, a psychologist, lecturer, founder of the Bilateral Safety Corridor Coalition of San Diego, California. Many women have crossed the line that separates human trafficking from the trafficking of drugs, weapons, and money. In 2006, some 3,455 women were arrested for smuggling undocumented immigrants along the southern border, according to the Department of Homeland Security. So far in 2007, another 1,606 women have been caught. Female coyotes tend to employ other women, most of them single mothers, to line up customers, arrange food and lodging for undocumented, and participate in cross-border money laundering. A real coyote organizes everything for you, from who and where to take the goats across and where they will stay on the side of the border, to who will deliver them to the door of the customer, the immigrant's family. The other ones who just take you across the river or through the desert, those are just sleazebags. That's why we're eating their lunch, says Gaviota, whose smuggling network operates in Laredo, Texas, and transports migrants into United States at border crossings or across the Rio Grande, depending on the customer's budget. The business is a real moneymaker, says Ramon Rivera, a DHS spokesperson in Washington, D.C. These women inspire confidence in the immigrants, and when the authorities stop them and take them to court, they give them shorter instances because they are mothers, daughters, because they are women. But when they get out, they go right back to doing the same thing, or worse, they start going into other areas. Many women have crossed the line that separates human trafficking from the trafficking of drugs, weapons, and money. I took my first chickens across when I was 9 years old, and when I grew up, I started moving drugs across the border. My mother taught us the business and made us tough. She hated poverty. For her, power was everything, says Crystal, daughter of the notorious drug smuggler Rosa Emma Carvajal Ontiveros, La Guerra Polvos, or the Blonde Powder Woman. Carvajal Ontiveros was shot to death on October 6, 2007, apparently by a hit squad in Chihuahua. I don't know that Chihuahua's border zone with New Mexico, according to her family. I don't think I've heard of that place before. Maybe I'm just not making a connection with how it is spelled. Chihuahua? Is it the same thing? It's just like Chihuahua border zone. Okay. Just like their male colleagues, female coyotes put their lives at risk. Corruption and bribes keep traffic moving. And like their male counterparts, female coyotes engage in extortion and bribery of both Mexican and American authorities, which are prerequisites for setting up and maintaining human trafficking rings. In this business, everybody gets a share. The ministries, the Border Patrol, and the narcos. You have to keep them happy so they let you do your job. Here, no money means no business, says Adamaris, a young woman in El Paso, Texas. As she tells it, her children's hunger drove her to turn her home into a safe house, where more than 500 undocumented migrants have passed through in less than a year. In addition to bribing federal agents, the women coyotes must also fill so-called quotas, monthly payments ranging from $5,000 to $15,000, demanded by members of the major drug smuggling cartels in order to be allowed to operate. Nobody shows their face. You pay middlemen, but you know full well who the money is going to, says Adamaris. According to the woman La Opinion interviewed all U.S. citizens except Adimaras, many female coyotes smuggle migrants through the border crossings rather than the mountains or the desert. It costs more, but it's safer. That's why they come to us. We don't mess around with walking for 3 lousy days in the desert. But you gotta have balls to take people across the border, says Margarita, who limits herself to smuggling women and children through California border crossings. Female coyotes say they run these risks to avoid poverty and for the love of their children. Margarita is motivated by economics, but in her case, it isn't fear of poverty, but her passion for the good life. With her Coach brand sneakers and Dolce & Gabbana sunglasses, Margarita goes to the Mexican side of the border every weekend looking for customers who will pay the tab for her luxurious lifestyle. Penalties in the United States for human trafficking can be as light as 1 year in prison or 2 or 3 years on probation, as well as confiscation of the vehicle used to transport the immigrants. In the worst case scenario, those convicted of conspiring to transport and house undocumented immigrants get a maximum sentence of 10 years in prison and a fine of up to $250,000 or both. This is why coyotes charge so much for their services, between $2,000 and $5,000 per person. They know that in every illegal crossing, there is a danger of making a mistake that could land them in prison for a long time. Cases like that of Carla Patricia Chavez of Honduras, leader of the gang responsible for the deaths of 19 undocumented immigrants in a trailer in Victoria, Texas, in May 2003, have made a deep impression on Gaviota. I knew her. It's not what it says. But Texas is our turf, and we all know the little shops. She didn't wise up, and she got found out. In this business, if you miss one little detail, they kill you or lock you up, and they take your whole crew down with you, says Gaviota, who keeps the names of her customers and employees under tight wraps. The real force is driving these women. Female coyotes say they run these risks to avoid poverty and for the love of their children. We all got into this business out of necessity. Some of us are single mothers and others have husbands in jail. The fact of the matter is that we're all on our own. Who are going to blame us for what we do? Who wouldn't do the same thing if the miserable pay you get in a factory couldn't be stretched far enough to feed your kids? And you find you can get twice the money for just giving a drink or taking care of a chicken. Anybody who blames us has never seen their kids cry out of hunger, affirms Esperanza, who smuggles undocumented migrants, money, and narcotics in Nogales, Arizona region. Her taste for drugs, or perhaps her hard life, have prematurely wrinkled her skin. Esperanza, who is about 40, looks 60 years old. But others say drugs and a lust for power are the real forces that drive women to enter the U.S.-Mexico trafficking business. Nearly 90% of the women arrested at the Mexican border on smuggling charges are drug addicts, according to the organization Integral Family Development in Nogales. Nogales? Nogales. No matter how needy you might be, if you're an honest person, you're not going to get involved in illegal activities. Women like to brag about being more sensitive, more honest, and protective than men, and that's not true with these women. Saying they're doing it for their children is just a pretext. It's really because they don't have enough money to feed their addiction, says Susana Padilla Gomez, director of the organization Integral Family Development on the border between Arizona and Sonora, Mexico. Whether out of vice, power, or hunger, it is clear that Gaviota, Crystal, Margarita, Adimaras, and Esperanza, and the blonde powder woman in her day, have won fame and fortune. As Esperanza says, women's stories of smuggling must not remain untold because she says getting... Okay. It's very much... I don't even know how to euphemize this. Okay. And now it's over. So doing a travel itinerary, okay, encouraging trafficking prevention, okay. What is that? It's not as though I want you to go to any of these places. Okay, but all right, so we could focus on things like conferences, okay? We could focus on things like precautions. Some of the books, and that's probably what I'll do. So, like the books focus on, some of the chapters focus on precautions, right? So, like I said earlier, I did want to read this. I don't know if I said this while I was recording here, but I wanted to read this, but wasn't sure it would make a good itinerary, and I don't think it will. But we can still use the book and look at some of the other chapters that'll come up later. So let's see if we can find anything that focuses on precautions. Efforts, so we have this chapter, efforts against human trafficking in the United States extend worldwide. Efforts against sounds like prevention, right? So let's go there. Efforts against. Efforts against. Here we go, page 107. I like this, the way they set up this table of contents. It has a little blurb. Efforts against human trafficking in the United States extend worldwide by Tara McKelvey. If given the political clout and operational capacity, organizations based in countries such as the United States can work with international organizations and governments to rescue exploited persons abroad and reduce human trafficking. All right, we'll use this one because hopefully it'll give us some more like action steps, right? Positive things to do. Let's see, 107. All right, again, Tara McKelvey is a senior editor at the American Prospect and the author of Monstering Inside America's Policy on Secret Interrogations and Torture in the Terror War. Sharon Cohn stops for a moment to adjust the screen before hitting the play button on the VCR in her office. Cohn works for a human rights organization called International Justice Mission, based in Arlington, Virginia. On the screen is a 5-minute montage of scenes shot over a 3-week period from January to February 2003 in Svay Pak, Cambodia, a booming red light district just outside Phnom Penh, the capital city. In one scene, American sex tourists stroll along a bustling street past a bar called Home Away from Home, and local pimps approach them. And another, a girl with longish bangs and huge dark eyes, is standing in a room. She doesn't know it, but she's being filmed by an IJM investigator with an undercover camera. How old? He asks. 10, she says, smiling. The film breaks off, and another girl who also says she's 10 appears. Her hair is pulled back by a plastic heart-shaped barrette. These girls, Cohn explains, are being sold to tourists for sex. On March 29, 2003, IJM staff members and Cambodian law enforcement officers raided some of the brothels shown in the film. The following October, 6 people were convicted on trafficking-related offenses and sentenced to 5 to 15 years in prison. 3 months later, in January, 1 brothel keeper was sentenced to 20 years. The trials in Cambodia were by far the most satisfying trial experience I've had, says Cohn, 33, who worked as a corporate lawyer for a Washington firm, Arnold and Porter, before joining IJM to head its intervention efforts. Over the past several years, Cohn and her colleagues have conducted such raids and various types of rescue missions in Latin America, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and Africa. As of 2004, IJM had helped more than 150 victims of child sexual exploitation or trafficking. Local government agencies and non-governmental organizations provide care for the children after they have been rescued, and Cohn likes to keep in touch with them. She reads aloud from a letter. How are you? I'm well. Please don't worry about me. Now I'm studying sewing and cross stitch. Thanks for the sweets. They were yummy. So I know a while back I talked about not covering heavy topics as much, but again, January is what it is, right? And perhaps trafficking was and is in this position so that it could very often be overlooked. Who wants to talk about trafficking at the beginning of the year? It's just so sour. But January is Trafficking Prevention Month, so here we are. And there isn't a whole lot else. I mean, there's definitely much more to pick from, but it was one of the larger themes for January. I'll see if I can maybe put an image at the beginning of this video to kind of give a warning about the topics that are being covered. But I mean, trafficking, it is trafficking, and it is an issue that impacts people of all ages, right? So I think, one reason why trafficking is so prevalent for certain age groups is because those are the more vulnerable ones, perhaps. So I don't know if I'll post this video just yet, but if I do, I just want to make it clear that I do recognize the sensitivity of the topic. Yeah, but I think collectively, right, we talked about the collective. We're talking a little bit about tarot, and I know the connections can get a little corny. But collectively, large scale, this is something that we all can probably consider as being like a goal, being that it's the fastest growing, right? I think now it's the 3rd largest. I think that's what it said earlier, but I do think it is the fastest growing illegal business. So a New Year's resolution for all of us could be to, curb that substantially. Combating a growing problem. According to a U.S. State Department report, Trafficking in Persons released in June 2004, 600,000 to 800,000 people are trafficked across international borders each year. Approximately 70% are women, and half of them are children. The majority of women and girls are victims of the commercial sex trade. The George W. Bush administration devoted nearly $74 million to anti-trafficking activities worldwide in fiscal year 2003, according to the State Department. What is the fiscal year of the government? United States government. Okay. October 1st to September 30th. So it's identified by the year in which it ends. So the fiscal year for 2025 started on October 1st. The fiscal year for the United States. I wonder if most states follow that. It would make sense for them to follow it, right? And, being that we were talking about calendars, another corny connection. Yeah, so the fiscal year is the year that's used for processing, money, right, for accounting. So even though our shared calendar begins in January, certain businesses will actually start tracking their money management for a particular year at whatever time they decide they want to for that business. It could initially be started just because of when the business started, or it could be because of the way business goes throughout the year for the fiscal year that determines the fiscal year. Like for pagesdale, I was thinking about having the fiscal year start in March. Yeah. But mainly because I still have to get some things situated to be able to begin hiring and doing things like that. So the fiscal year. And so also in relation to hiring, because I think people have many questions about pagesdale and about its validity, right? So particular roles can be hired for, right? Especially if they're commission-based roles, right? And I do not have a bunch of clients. I do not have a bunch of income, but developing an online presence, right, was the first priority for that, for me personally, okay? Because in my opinion, okay, and from things that I've read, right, if you want to have some control over your branding, right, and the purpose of the service that you're offering, right, you might want to actually create your presence first before you start getting clients who could then more so influence the branding. And then you'll kind of be chasing them around for, what the branding is. So that's kind of why I took that route. I mean, not saying that I wouldn't have taken money if I didn't have, but I wouldn't have taken money if I could have. But yeah, I would really like to just, take it easy and yeah, slow and steady. So back to this. The George W. Bush administration devoted nearly $74 million. And then we were talking about the fiscal year. As one of the leading faith-based organizations involved in the anti-trafficking programs, IJM was praised by federal officials at a February 2003 conference, Path-Breaking Strategies in the Global Fight Against Sex Trafficking. It has received money from the U.S. Agency for International Development for its work in Cambodia. IJM was also cited in a June 8, 2004, New York Times article about Americans who commit sex crimes overseas and the U.S. government's recently expanded efforts to prosecute them in this country. In the early 1990s, IJM's founder and president, Gary Haugen, 41, worked as counsel in the Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Justice Department. Then, in 1994, he became officer in charge of the United Nations investigation of genocide in Rwanda. The idea behind IJM, which opened its doors in April 1997, emerged from his experience during those years. He decided to create a way to address the suffering and injustice that staff of faith-based private aid agencies saw in their countries, but were powerless to stop. Indeed says, going for Haugen. Many of them seemed paralyzed by despair. His approach in IJM then was to take the oppression step by step. All right. Pronunciation. Trafficking prospers in places where criminals can profit from the enterprise because laws against it are not strictly enforced. Aid workers often observe severe human rights abuses in the communities where they serve. He explained to the House Subcommittee on International Terrorism, Non-Proliferation, and Human Rights on June 25, 2003. These workers refer these cases to us, and then we conduct a professional investigation to document the abuses and mobilize intervention on behalf of the victims. Today, a staff of lawyers, criminal investigators, and government relations experts work out of the Washington office in 8 field offices in countries such as Thailand and the Philippines, and in recently opened offices in Cambodia, Zambia, and Uganda. IJM staff work on a range of human rights issues, including efforts to free victims of bonded slavery in South Asia, protect the legal rights of African widows whose husbands die of AIDS. Many lose their land after the deaths of their husbands, prosecute rape cases in Peru, and defend children who have been imprisoned for petty crimes in the Philippines. Subverting the law. Haugen's background in law enforcement guides IJM's approach to addressing human rights abuses. For example, he explains trafficking prospers in places where criminals can profit from the enterprise because laws against it are not strictly enforced. Therefore, IJM works closely with local police on a variety of cases, helping officers develop investigative leads and collect evidence. If the customers can find the victims of sex trafficking whenever they want, so can the police. Haugen told the House Subcommittee How, therefore, do you possibly get away with running a sex trafficking enterprise? You do so only if permitted by local law enforcement. Sex trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation can be drastically reduced wherever a country has the political will and the operational capacity to send the perpetrators to jail. Haugen says he believes people of faith have an obligation to help those who are suffering or oppressed. When our grandchildren ask us where we were when the weak, the helpless, and the vulnerable of our era needed people of compassion and purpose and hope, says Haugen, I hope we can say that we showed up and that we showed up on time. In early 2003, correspondents from the television's Dateline NBC program accompanied Cambodian police and IJM staff on a raid of Cambodian brothels as they removed the children from the premises and helped place as many as possible in safe houses. Footage of the raid aired in a January 23 segment titled Children for Sale. Shortly after the segment appeared on TV, a 54-year-old radiologist from Tulsa, Oklahoma, who was secretly recorded by Dateline producers as he talked about paying for sex with underage girls, was placed under investigation by the Oklahoma State Medical Licensure Board. IJM turned its evidence over to the United States Department of Justice and has cooperated with law enforcement agencies around the world that are prosecuting Western sex tourists. Beyond raids and trials. But critics of IJM's approach argue that the group's emphasis on criminal justice addresses only part of the problem. The argument has been made that you can't effectively combat trafficking unless you attack poverty, says Cohn. Okay. And that is getting at what we were reading earlier, okay, saying that women who participate in it aren't doing it for, financial necessity, right? Just saying. Says Cohn. It simply isn't true. Hold on. The argument has been made that you can't effectively combat trafficking unless you attack poverty. Wait a second. The argument has been made that you can't effectively combat trafficking unless you attack poverty. It simply isn't true. We have been in places in East Africa where there's poverty, but we weren't able to find kids for sale. Okay. Yeah, I jumped ahead. I mean, I should have read before I said anything, which I do that right. Okay, so actually, yeah, so it is agreeing with what what she'd said in her article, saying that there's no, like, the need for money really isn't an explanation for why these things happen. It simply isn't true. Man, you kind of want to find a way to, but it simply isn't true. We have been in places in East Africa where there's poverty, but we weren't able to find kids for sale. It happens in an environment that tolerates it and where there is no local law enforcement. That's good to know. I mean, it's very disappointing, but also encouraging. So that's why IJM staffers are trying to assist local officials by helping to collect statements from witnesses and providing copies of videos made during their own investigations. They also give prosecutors testimony. Their investigators have gathered. I think there should be testimonies. They also give prosecutors, oh, okay. I guess testimony doesn't have to be made plural. They also give prosecutors testimony their investigators have gathered. Okay. As a result of such cooperation, countries such as Cambodia have invited IJM to train their local law enforcement officers. Most recently, the government of Bolivia has asked IJM to train police officers in the humane treatment of street children. After children and women are saved from brothels, IJM staffers help them settle into programs sponsored by local aftercare partners, says Penny Hunter, IJM's Vice President of Communications. The programs are designed to ensure that a safe and nurturing home is provided for rescued victims, she adds. Finally, IJM caseworkers follow up with the victims to help ease their transition to a new life. Haugen sums up the struggle. Sex trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation can be drastically reduced wherever a country has the political will and the operational capacity to send the perpetrators to jail and to treat the victims with compassion and dignity. This is a fight that can actually be won. Right. And so that's the end of that. And I like that one. I think that one's really good. There are things that are taught, right? The humane treatment of IJM staffers. So I wonder if IJM has any sort of like information on there or that we can kind of use for this itinerary. Then there are different places to go. Let's just see what IJM has. International Justice Mission. Just IJM.org. Super easy. It's asking for donation. Can I continue without donation for today? Wow, apparently I cannot. Can I? Okay, I could. So let's see what they have here. Our work, trafficking and slavery, violence against women and children, stories of rescue, studies, public policy, get involved. Get involved, churches, volunteer, advocacy, students, pray, careers, interns, and fellows, start a fundraiser workplace. So we have a few options there. It seems like advocacy, starting a fundraiser. About IJM, let's read a little bit more. Because I think we were on to something really good for an itinerary for this time around. International Justice Mission is a global organization that protects people in poverty from violence. We partner with local authorities in 33 programs, offices in 19 countries to combat trafficking and slavery, violence against women and children, and police abuse of power. Our mission. IJM's mission is to protect people in poverty from violence by rescuing victims, bringing criminals to justice, restoring survivors to safety and strength, and helping local law enforcement build a safe future that lasts. All right, here's a TED Talk, Hidden Reasons for Poverty the World Needs to Address Now. Violence is a global problem. Okay, IJM. All right, so I like it's cold in here. I like the idea of doing a fundraiser. There's volunteering and fundraising. So let's look at volunteering and then start a fundraiser. And then this, of course, would be the right part of it. What it looks like to volunteer as an IJM champion. We're on a mission to help build a safer, more just world, and we need your help. Yes, you. Your unique voice, passion, skills, and perspective can make a meaningful impact and help protect vulnerable people all over the world. Here's what you'll experience when you become an IJM champion. Insider updates, monthly reports from the field, skills-based trainings on how to advocate, volunteer at events, and speak on behalf of IJM. Inspiring community, easy access to resources that will help equip you to meaningfully engage your local community, IJM's mission, advocacy actions, mobilize a movement of grassroots advocacy in your region through letters, online actions, and meetings. All right, and that's the volunteer tab. Okay, let's look at the start a fundraiser one. How can I fundraise? If you have a fundraising idea, we encourage you to run it. But if you need somewhere to start, we've got you covered. Here's some ideas: Justice Box, a film screening, Race to Restore, Dresscember, wear a dress or a tie every day in December to raise awareness and fundraise the fight against human trafficking. Oh, wow. Threads, host a pop-up thrift shop of gently used clothing to raise money for the work of justice. Be a trailblazer. Start your own unique campaign. Yeah, I love this. I love the fundraising. I like that. I think that's a really good one. Mostly because the volunteering isn't really straightforward, right? This is pretty straightforward, right? Fundraise. So it's a fundraiser. With IJM. Now, the next question is, where are we going? And what are we studying? So the study So the study could be just choose a chapter. Just read from the book. Should it be read the book considering fundraising ideas? I don't think so. All right, and now the question is, where are we going? It's based in Arlington, Virginia. Should we just go to Arlington? I don't think so. Because if we're basing it all around the justice mission, the international justice mission, then yeah, I don't think we should go to Arlington, Virginia. I don't know, I'm kind of weirded out by the whole travel and trafficking thing. But it's not about the trafficking. It's about the chapter talking about trafficking. So what locations come up in this chapter, right? What locations come up in the chapter? There's Cambodia. It doesn't make sense to go to Cambodia. It could be another sort of flexible itinerary type of a deal where where? Okay. What I'll do is I'll look for places with the lowest trafficking rates. Cities with the lowest trafficking rates. And I can it's an effort, right? I mean, I can't. Countries with the lowest human trafficking rates. Wow. Sao Tome, Principe, Nauru, San Marino, Monaco, Liechtenstein, Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Andorra, Uruguay, St. Kitts and Nevis, Dominica, Armenia, Vanuatu, Tonga, Samoa, Palau. Okay, now that's in South America, not Central America. Is South America come up? No, it's only talking about Latin America. I don't want to send anyone. I don't want to encourage going anywhere that has the need for combating trafficking, right? Especially when we're talking about trafficking. I'm not sure how to. The United States is 97. Global Organized Crime Index is that's what I'm looking at right now. Yeah, and I was supposed to be doing a better job keeping track of my sources when I'm searching. So Google searches. So here we're looking at the Global Organized Crime Index. Yeah, I think that's great. Go to these countries, see what they're like. I don't know, make observations, read the book, or make observations of these. It can't be the same every time. Make observations, but just go to this random city. I'm going to have to do this on another live maybe, but I'm going to pick out the top places in terms of low trafficking rates. We're going to go there. And while we're there, okay, while we're safe from the stuff, we can still study trafficking and try to make a positive impact, right? You can do a fundraiser. You could come up with a unique fundraiser that you could do from anywhere. You can read the book from anywhere. But we're going to go to trafficking-free places. So I don't even know where Tuvalu is. I thought I was pretty good about knowing it's a country in Oceania. Tuvalu is an island country in the Polynesian subregion of Oceania in the Pacific Ocean, about midway between Hawaii and Australia. That might be why. This seems super peaceful. We're just going to Tuvalu. This is just, yeah. So essentially, we're going to Tuvalu, Sao Tome and Principe, Nauru, San Marino, and Monaco. Okay, Tuvalu. I think that's enough connection. I think that's enough. Tuvalu. All right, cool. Sao Tome and Principe. Now, of course, I'm not trying to put these places on blast to, I mean, again, I don't think that I would have like enough of an impact to actually do that. But, you know, like if you were trying to send a lot of people to these places saying that it's low on trafficking, would that make it a target? Like, is that a thing? If a place is low, I don't think so. I think if a place is low on trafficking, it's low on trafficking. I don't think it's susceptible to, I don't know. Just, so that's for the next book. And yeah, we'll just keep it going like that. So the top 5 places for the lowest rates of trafficking are going to be the places that we go. And that's it. And then the study and the right will be more influenced by the actual book this time around. So travel is more inspired by the theme for this week, and then the other 2 are coming more so from the book. All right, and I think we're done. So until next reach out, keep it out.